I'm Dave Arruda, and I'm here today with my dad, Jesse Arruda, and he is a veteran of the Vietnam War. And this interview is for Professor Carter's U.S. Wars class. I'd like to start this interview by getting to know your background with regards to your service in Vietnam. What branch of service did you serve in during the war?
The U.S. Navy.
Why did you join the Navy?
Because I was drafted in the Army, and I figured I'd go in the Navy because they had the field that I was interested in. So I spent 4 years in the Navy.
How old were you when you joined the Navy?
I was 19.
What were you doing before you joined the Navy?
I attended vocational school up in Weymouth for carpentry.
How did your parents feel about joining the service?
I was drafted, and I decided to go in the Navy, so I went in the Navy for 4 years.
Your parents didn't have anything to say?
No.
Where were you sent to serve your basic training?
Great Lakes.
Okay, how long were you in the Great Lakes for?
13 weeks. Basic training.
Did you experience any culture shock when you arrived at basic training? Because there's people from all over the country, different walks of life.
No, I just did what I had to do.
What did you dislike or like about basic training? Is there anything that really stuck out in your memory?
I think they did a good job.
What did they do during basic training?
They trained you so that you had discipline, and you worked as a group.
Did they train you at all for the job that you'd be doing while you were at basic or after basic
They
training?
trained you all about shipboard, what you would be expected of once you got to the fleet, how to get around in the ship, some of the the characteristics of the ship, what you would encounter if you had a problem, what the names of different things on the ship were.
Did they teach you anything about your job that you have on the ship specifically, or was that after basic training?
That was after basic training.
How long did you spend training for your very specific job?
They sent me to an A school, and there was a lot of on-the-job training.
Did they have a mock ship that you were training on, or was it classroom based?
At the base at Great Lakes, where I went to A school, they had a complete engine room, and you got to light the plant off, secure the plant, and learn all the parts of the plant.
What exactly was your specialty once you joined the fleet?
When I first got on the ship, I was in the machine repair shop, which had to do with lathes and milling machines, and we made parts for the equipment down in the holes. If a pump had to be rebuilt, we could make the pump shaft, and we could turn the impeller down and put wearing rings in, rebuild valves. So I worked in the machine shop for almost maybe 9 months. And then I went for my rating, which was a machinist mate, and I ended up in AC&R, air conditioned refrigeration. But my training was for down the holes, lighting the plant off, securing the plant, maintaining the plant down in the engine rooms. But A-gang was where I was, and we had to take care of after steering, anchor windlass, all the air conditioners aboard the ship, the ice makers, um, galley equipment, laundry equipment. There was quite a bit of machinery. All your magazines, because the ship had magazines through the whole hull with gunpowder, and that all had to be kept at a certain temperature. It was quite involved.
Which unit or ship were you assigned to after once you joined the fleet, and who was your commanding officer aboard the ship?
Which unit?
Yep.
I was a machinery repairman, and then when I went to go for my rating, I went for machinist mate, and I was still in A gang. And then when I got off to St. Paul, we decommissioned it up in Bremerton, Washington, and I went to the East Coast, down in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was in A gang there. But I also worked down in the holds, down in the engine room, main control.
So you were on board the St. Paul during your deployment in Vietnam specifically, and then there was another ship after it.
It was another ship to end off my 4th year.
And who was the officer aboard the St. Paul, commanding officer?
Commanding officer was there was different commanding officers. They take and go for like a year and a half. Then there would be a change of command. But there was it's in the book that I have, the names of the commanding officers and the executive officer.
Now I think we're going to move on to more specific questions regarding your experience in the military. What was life like aboard the St. Paul? What was your average day? If you just walk through.
Average day, you'd have reveille. You'd be up by 7 o'clock. Then you'd go for breakfast, have breakfast, and then you'd have either go to the holes, go to the engine room, and do what was ever required down there. If the ship was underway, you'd have to stand a watch. After your watch, you had different duties. We had all the machinery down there had to be maintained on a schedule. So you had to pull the cards and go to the machines that needed to be checked out. You had packing glands that had to be checked. You had to, rebuild, sometimes change the packing, change oil, all kinds of jobs to do. Rebuild valves if they were leaking, because the tighter your plant is, the more efficient it is.
What were your specific duties aboard the ship? Explain, what was watch? What did you watch for?
When you went down in the holes, you either stand watch at the control panel, and you'd answer bells. If there was bells like a change in the speed or anything like that, you had to document it, and keep an eye on a series of gauges, and drop the speed down if you had to go into reverse or whatever. That had to be all documented. And you had we had a captain right there that would stand behind you and make sure everything was done the way it was supposed to be done. Then you had to do your work in the holes. You had evaporators, you had generators that had to be watched. You were making water. It had to be transferred. You had potable water, and you had water for the steam plant, and the water for the steam plant had to be real pure. there was always something to do. Clean the area, polish the bright work, clean the bilges, take readings, you know, and all the machinery, because they had gauges, temperature gauges for all the bearings.
And what was your favorite part about being aboard the ship?
My favorite part was being with other individuals who were trying to make everything work. And it was a challenge, and it was a good feeling to see a big ship steam through the water. It was quite impressive.
How big was the ship that you were aboard?
It was like 750, 800 foot long, and it was about 95 foot wide. Had a draft of 45 feet, and there were times when we got it up to like 30 knots.
That's fast for such a big ship. What was your least favorite part about being aboard the ship? Were the living quarters cramped, or was the food any
The
good?
first year in Vietnam, it was really hot because we didn't have air conditioning, and all we had was forced draft blowers that took outside air, but the temperature of the air was like 105 degrees. And then we got back after our first deployment, and there was an aircraft carrier that was being decommissioned, and we took all the air conditioners off of that ship and brought it to our ship and put them in the compartments, berthing compartments, so people would have some air conditioning.
What was it like when the St. Paul was on the gun line in Vietnam? Was it tense aboard the ship? What kind of
No,
things changed?
everybody had a job to do, and everybody pitched in and got the job done. It was noisy. When you went on the deck, you had to put your earplugs in, otherwise you couldn't hear. There would be like a beeping sound, and if you didn't have your earplugs in, it wasn't, you couldn't hear very well after that.
Could you sleep at night with all the shells going off constantly?
When I first got deployed in Vietnam, it took me like 4 days before I finally fell asleep, and now I could sleep through anything.
How many shells were shot off during the time that you were over there?
The first year that we was over there, we shot 68,000 rounds of 5-inch and 8-inch shells.
What was exactly the role of the St. Paul while you were on the gun line?
It was a First Fleet flagship, and we had an admiral on board, and they were in charge of all the destroyers and cruisers in the area.
And St. Paul was a cruiser.
It was a cruiser, heavy cruiser.
What was your impression of the enemy?
We never really did see the enemy. We were off the coast, and we were lobbing shells. We had a helicopter that would come in, it would take off, would land on a fantail, and then it was like a spotter, and it would tell us if we were landing the shells where they were supposed to be landed. And they'd give, tell us coordinates and things like that. Then the computers would take over. The barrels on the guns, on the 8-inch guns, weighed 16 tons, and we wore out the lands. There's like lands inside the barrel that makes the projectile spin like a football, and we wore those out, and we pulled into the Philippines, and they replaced all the gun barrels.
How many guns were aboard the ship?
There was 3 8-inch mounts, and there was 10 5-inch mounts, and then there was like 16 3-inch mounts.
And pretty much you were supplying cover fire for ground troops, or artillery for ground troops.
Yeah, we were, worked with Marines in the Army, and if they got into a ticklish spot, we could lob shells in to protect them, or to take out areas that they felt that needed to be, worked over.
Did the St. Paul ever take a hit during combat?
We took a hit up by the DMZ, and it went to an officer's stateroom, and we ended up firing the island. There was vegetation and trees on the island, but before we left, there was nothing left to the place. Then we steamed up to the Philippines and had the repair facility come and take care of the side of the ship.
Was anybody injured during that?
No, it didn't injure anyone.
Did any members of the St. Paul's crew perish during any of the deployments?
We had 4 people get killed on the forecastle, which is the forward part of the ship. The anchor chain came out of the anchor locker, and they were badly injured.
Did you ever become ill during your duty overseas?
I had typhoid fever, and I had to be medevaced to Yokosuka, Japan, and then I went back to the ship.
How was the treatment in Japan?
They did an excellent job.
Did you have any interaction with American soldiers at all while you were aboard ship or in Japan or anywhere else for that matter?
Yeah, when we had we go on we'd leave the gun line and go on R&R. We'd pull into different ports, and we'd get off, and we'd meet up with other ships that were overseas and get acquainted. But we never visited their ships or anything. We just saw them on the beach.
What were the American soldiers like that you met?
They were over there doing their job. They were, in the service and doing what they had to do to fulfill their deployment.
What other places did you visit during your tour of duty other than Vietnam?
Bangkok, Sasebo, Japan, Yokosuka, Japan, Busan, Korea, Guam, Hawaii, Australia.
What was it like to leave the ship in these foreign ports? Do you have any stories that you'd like to share? Any memories of being overseas, not in combat?
No, it was a lot different. The people over there are the Orientals I respected. They were behind it. They're not really. They weren't really westernized, but they were becoming westernized. They're very talented. I think they're gifted. I think they're smart, and they were nice to us.
There's a rumor that some of your friends tried to sneak a monkey aboard your ship. How did that turn out?
Well, when guys go on the beach, they have a few drinks and they do some strange things.
Did you get to bring anything back from overseas, or Anybody, any of your friends bring anything interesting back aboard the ship?
We could buy things on the beach and bring them back, store them on board and send them home.
What type of items were popular amongst the sailors to bring back?
They were buying different things like motorcycles, stereo equipment, jewelry, ivory, carvings, all kinds of things.
While you were aboard ship, did you ever hear any news about protests that were going on in the States regarding the war? Or is that something that wasn't spoken of while you were aboard ship?
No, we could get the news and whatnot, but we had a job to do and we had to focus on what we were doing.
How were you received when you returned to the States?
I think I was, the feeling that I had was people were welcoming us with open hands and stuff, and they were trying to, they were concerned for us.
There was more support and less criticism towards you as a sailor or soldier.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a protest towards the war in general, not towards the servicemen. Is that how you felt?
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I'd like to finish up the interview with some questions that require reflection upon your military career.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is, do you feel that you made the right choice in joining the service? Obviously, you were drafted, but in joining the Navy, do you feel like that was a good thing for your life?
I'm glad I think everyone should serve their country, because we have a wonderful country. We got a lot to be thankful for.
What was the most life-changing experience in retrospect about being part of the military? Is it the discipline, or is it just the service?
No, it makes you grow up quick, and you realize what you have, and you see what the rest of the you see what the rest of the world, how they have to live, and I think we're spoiled. That we ought to appreciate the fact that we have what we have. We have too much sometimes, and you don't need everything that we have. And you see how other people live, and they seem to be just as happy as we are.
Is there anything that you regret about being part of the military?
No.
Do you feel that fighting in Vietnam was for a just cause? Did you ever really have a sense of what you were fighting for, or is it more just you had duty and you had to fulfill it?
That's more or less the way it went. We had a duty to perform, and we tried to do our duty and to try to protect our people that were there. And
what would your advice be to a young person today who is thinking about joining the service?
I think if a person decided that he wanted to go into service, that it would be good for him. I have no regrets.
Great. It's been a good interview. Thank you very much for your time.